Hello and welcome back to Hindustan Astrology. I'm Katya, and in today's video, we are going to discuss the upcoming nodal shift, which is happening May 29th, 2025. We have Rahu going from Pisces back into Aquarius and Ketu going from Virgo back into Leo. And I have on today my dear mentor, Dr. Santhip Kanholy. So thank you, Santhip G, for joining me.
Yeah, namaste, Katya, and namaste to all your viewers. Thank you for inviting me again back to your channel. Great to be here.
Yes, namaste. Um, yeah, so we have a lot of stuff to discuss, and I think we're already seeing a lot of these themes in the news because one of the big things that's happening with this shift is that Saturn's in Pisces, and that happened, on the solar eclipse. So we're kind of getting a little taste of some of the flavors of this, the day April 21st that we had Rahu and Saturn conjunct in Pisces, Pope Francis passed away. And, that would seem like we should have seen that coming, but I did not see that coming. And it really kind of took my breath away. He was really one of the last true voices for peace on the planet. And so I'm just, really sitting with this one and thinking about the lessons that he taught us. But as Rahu goes into Aquarius, we're going to see much more humanitarian causes, much more visionary thinking, definitely more technology. And then, Ketu into Leo. We're going to see the downfall of a lot of leaders, especially a lot of people in the public eye, such as royalty or celebrities. And just really kind of a humbling, I think, and really being called back to, to source because, Leo is ruled by the sun. And if you are not connected to source, you will really feel it during this transit, I feel. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start the presentation. So, we have Rahu in Aquarius and Ketu in Leo, the Aquarian disruption and Leo's last war. Planetary omens for 2025 to 2026. And this is all based on Sage Parashara and all of, the wonderful things that he taught us. So we cannot forget to mention our gurus. Now, this is what I have for the slides. I did add the nakshatras for Aquarius and Leo, so there's actually 39 slides, but this is where we're going with everything. And what I felt was really interesting was when I went back in time and I looked over when was the last time, Rahu was in Aquarius, Ketu was in Leo, and Saturn was in Pisces. And the last time was 1673. And there was a lot of very interesting things going on around the planet at that time. So for me, that was really the enlightening research. But for people, that are new here, I don't want to, dissuade the beginners from feeling like this is too advanced. Let's just go back to basics and, who are Rahu and Ketu, right? They are shadow points. They are the eclipse points. And as shadow planets, they are Chaya Grahas, the mathematical points where moon's orbit crosses the ecliptic. So the ecliptic is nothing more than our equator extended out into the sky and then tilted at the Earth's axis. That is the ecliptic, and that is the line of, how the planets from our view from Earth travel around us, right? So the North Node is called Rahu. He is the head of the serpent. He is representing ambition, obsession, and material desires. And then we have Ketu, the South Node. This is the tail and in the body of the serpent, and he represents detachment, spirituality, and past life karma, as well as our ancestors. And in mundane astrology, it's about, loss and surrender as well. They are karmic and transformative influences. So Rahu forces growth through disruption, unfulfilled desires, and radical change. And Ketu brings liberation by dissolving attachments and forcing spiritual evolution. And together they represent the soul's karmic journey. Rahu pushes forward, Ketu releases the past. And they say, Rahu brings you into this life, Ketu takes you out. Okay. So Rahu is what you're here to do. It's your fate and destiny in this life. And Ketu is your past lives and your ancestors, but it's not what you're here to do. It's what you're good at and it's what you've mastered, but it's not necessarily what you're here to do. Okay. And then the effects when they change signs, which happens every 18 and a half months. Rahu's new sign intensifies innovation, rebellion, and unrest in that sign's domain. And Ketu's new sign triggers crisis, endings, and spiritual lessons in its sign's themes. So an example, Rahu in Aquarius, 2025, tech upheavals, and Ketu in Leo, fall of egocentric leaders. And so we have the upcoming transit, which starts May 29th of this year, goes till November 19th of next year. So key themes. So Aquarius, is the rebel. So, and Rahu is also a rebel. So you bring these two together and you've got a disruptive awakening. Okay. So innovation, rebellion, collective transformation, manifestations could possibly turn out in AI breakthroughs, rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, reshaping industries, space exploration, private and governmental pushes towards Mars, lunar bases, and beyond, and social upheavals, mass movements challenging traditional power structures such as tech revolutions and decentralized governance. And then for Ketu in Leo, we have the fall of the kings, ego dissolution, legacy collapse, spiritual rebirth could manifest as celebrity scandals, high-profile downfalls exposing corruption and hubris, spiritual leaders rising, shift from materialistic idols to wisdom-based influence. And you can already see that happening right now. And old institutions crumbling, governments, monarchies, and corporate giants losing public trust. And then on top of it, of course, we have Saturn in Pisces, the karmic judge. Regulations on tech, right? Saturn is going to put a clamp down on some of the, liberties I think that AI is taking. And also humility for leaders of all kinds. And then, just a brief looking back, the last time, we had this cycle, we had the iPhone come out, also the 2008 financial crash. And then before that, it was the dawn of the internet, and also the Berlin Wall was taken down. So, themes for Rahu and Aquarius, key things that we're going to see: technological disruption and AI revolutions, right? Government's going to challenge it. There's going to be a lot of pushback, I think. Advancements in quantum computing and the rise of drone warfare. Ongoing discussions about space colonization, such as Elon Musk's aspirations for Mars. Social movements and humanitarian crises, protests advocating for universal basic income, climate activism initiates and technological solutions for refugees. Unorthodox beliefs and scientific controversies, transhumanism. And this is what I was telling you before we started recording. I was listening to Coast AM radio with George Norrie, who I love so much, and he had a guest on who was saying, "Look around you. We are the last real humans. You know, after us, everyone's going to have some kind of implant in them, some kind of technological device, something that changed us, whether it's at the DNA level or something that's in our body. We're the last real humans. Cryptocurrency, anarchy, bioengineered organs. And that's something, it's happening right now. Abrupt cosmic phenomena, UFO revelations, asteroid resource extraction, and conflicts in space. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think
we
this
go
one is
ahead.
going to be a big thing. Katya, I think, in my opinion, definitely UFO revelations, aliens coming back home, all that thing, good chance something like that might happen. So we'll have to be
Yeah.
prepared for it. Conflict in space is interesting, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I think, a lot of from what I mean, because I follow this topic. So what I've seen is that, what they're finding is that a lot of these orbs and a lot of this phenomenon going on, like at Blind Frog Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch, these beings live here. They've lived here
Yeah,
longer than us. So our whole idea of UFO is going to change during this cycle because we're going to say, oh, well, what is not from here and what is from here? Because there are other beings living here that are going to be acknowledged finally, I think, during this cycle. And then historical stuff, the last time we had Facebook come out, the crisis again, early internet, but then also the Chernobyl disaster, right? Rahu's technological repercussions. So, we could see some more stuff with nuclear, you know, nuclear energy, nuclear warfare, whether it's coming in, going out, something could crop up during this time, I think. And then we have the themes of Ketu in Leo, the great purification of power. So we have collapse of established power structures, political resignations. And we already see that with Canada, right? Corporate controversies. Tesla. And reforms in monarchy. What's going on in the UK? I mean, it's like everybody's sick. I don't know how much longer I don't know how much more relevancy they have. I think that we'll see them kind of be brought to their knees during this cycle. Spiritual versus egocentric leadership, emergence of modest leaders, decline of self-centered personas, spiritual mentors taking the place of influencers. Wouldn't that be nice, right?
right.
People
Yeah,
that are have their, a higher I guess they're more concerned with our general welfare. I feel like, there's so much placed upon materialism, with influencers. Buy this, buy that. It's just like, God, enough. Teach me
right.
something, right?
Yeah, makes sense actually. I think it'll be interesting to see that play out. A lot of leadership falling down and a lot of people you look up to falling down, that kind of thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Right. Renewal of creativity through sacrifice. In entertainment industry, AI assumes the roles of celebrities while independent films thrive. Music, a revival of vintage styles that incorporate spiritual themes. And again, I mean, vinyl's been popular for the last 20 years or so, but I really think people are going to be hearkening back to um, more grassroots type of music, more humble music that is centered upon the instruments and less upon, the technology, right?
Yeah, makes
And
sense. Yeah.
then last time we had Britney Spears, her breakdown, right? K2 Leo. And remember, she shaved off her head. That is, if that is not K2 and Leo, I don't know what is, The lion's mane being, it's kind of like Samson and Delilah, right? But his strength did not lie upon it in his hair.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the last time, the Everon Contra affair, exposing power dynamics. And then we have Saturn in Pisces. So is there anything you want to say before I can you just keep talking?
No, yeah, it's good, pretty good actually. I think all that's good stuff. Definitely the Ketu and Leo part with a lot of spiritual knowledge coming through as well, as you did mention, and so for a lot of past life leaders showing up. That's also one more thing, as you mentioned, which you captured as spiritual mentorship and spiritual people coming up. And the fall of monarchy is also something that definitely will happen, like a big change in monarchies around the world, or some transformation around the monarchies around the world also. That is definitely royalty will be affected more when Ketu is in Maga and all that. But yeah, for sure. That'll be interesting to see as well.
Yeah. And so that'll be at the end of the cycle when K2 goes into Maga. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
going to be
the thing about the thing. Sorry, thing about the music is also very interesting because it will be in Purafalgi Nakshatra. So we might be seeing some, either as you said, return to the old grassroots music or old traditional music forms. A popular artist coming, bringing back an old style and all that. That kind of thing could become very interesting, to be frank. Yeah, I would not
yeah.
be surprised if country music became popular again or whatnot, right? Something like that. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, well, my husband and I love an artist called Billy Strings. He is an
Mm-hmm.
American folk slash, I guess, rock artist, like in the jam band era uh, type of music, Grateful Dead. And he is bluegrass, but he mixes, it with rock and some other things. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Saturn in Pisces, so he's going to be in Pisces for 2.5 years, and so for most of it, Rahu will be in Aquarius and Ketu will be in Leo for most of it, till the end. Um, and so Pisces, of course, Jupiter ruled watery, Saturn, discipline, karma. So we have spirituality, spiritual accountability, and structured compassion. Reality checks on dreams and idealism, regulations on AI, healthcare, and spirituality, right? And this is time for us to, like, get out of the ivory tower and hit the streets as leaders. It's time for us to get out and actually get to the people and help them. So if there's anything we learned from Pope Francis, this is his legacy, right? Humble yourself, get out there, talk to the real people. Don't stay in your office all day. Get out and talk to the people that really need um, some kindness and some compassion, right? Saturn's impact on Rahu in Aquarius. Um, Saturn's realism tempers Rahu's chaotic innovation. So, stricter laws on tech and AI, controlled social reforms, and potential themes: government, Saturn regulating disruptive tech, which we're already starting to see a little bit. Humanitarian crises, Pisces, forcing systemic fixes. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be a lot of broken stuff that needs to be fixed. And so I think Saturn will be the taskmaster to finally, you know, fix the problems on the ground, you know. And then his impact on K2 and Leo. Um, Saturn forces humility on Leo's ego-driven power, fall of narcissistic leaders, austerity in entertainment and royalty, because it's a 6-8, right? And so that's going to bring difficulty. Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, as you currently said that ego-driven power, right? So the Leo is also famous for being a narcissistic sign, and when you have Shani, Ketu, as you correctly identified, 6-8 kind of thing, definitely they might have to be accountable. Their secrets could come out with Shani being there, as you mentioned as well. So definitely we are going to see a lot of change in leadership and what we would want out of our leaders as well. We are going to see that kind of change come up without doubt, definitely.
Mhm. Yes. Um, and some other potential themes, spiritual leaders, Pisces replacing charismatic figures. Um, old institutions, Saturn dismantling Ketu, pomp and legacy, right? Things that just aren't, they don't mean things to people today, right? And so the last time we had this, Saturn actually was in Leo, then Virgo, not exact, but it's kind of similar. Again, the financial crash. But then in 1950, 1952, Saturn in Pisces, post World War II idealism. You know, the 50s was like supposed to be the golden era, right? It was like um, people were home from the war and they wanted to recreate, you know, everyday life. The UN was created at that time, and other humanitarian structures versus the Cold War power struggles, which was K2 and Leo. Um, so that's on top of it. And then we have the nakshatras, right? So this is just, you know, I was just like, well, what are ways this could pan out? So we have Purva Bhadrapada, May 29th to December 1st. AI oracles disrupt organized religion. You know, that is a possibility. Actually, and you know what? Not just religion, but therapy. A lot of people are using AI as therapy now, you know, instead
Oh,
of,
really?
oh, yeah, they'll, you know, this is the way I'm feeling today. You know, can you give me some, can you organize my thoughts and give me some insight and guidance, right? You do that with
Interesting.
AI, you will be blown away. I think a lot of therapists are going to have a problem because of this.
Sure, yeah.
And we already know, you know, there we know the mission to the moon, mission to Mars, but you know, we might hear something about a first civilian-led Mars mission announced. Who knows? You know? Um, and then December 1st of this year till July 1st next year, Rahu will be in Shetabishak, and we have possible medical taboos broken, human genome patent wars erupt. I mean, there's all sorts of, you know, DNA, and there's just so many studies going on right now. With AI, there's bound to be some kind of breach, you know, of privacy or something like that. But then
I
we're also
think,
going to see a lot of great breakthroughs. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, that'll be a big thing actually, because AI, when AI enters into medical field, we are going to see huge explosion in medical technologies as well. Disruptive technologies on the medical front is something that will definitely play out. As you said, the pattern human genome kind of thing is also going to happen when Rahu enters into that Satabisha and Ketu enters into Maga as well. So a lot of genetic history, genes kind of things is going to happen in a big way. Like it could be the starting point of like gene-based therapy and all that, right? Something which you have already seen in movies and all that. It could really come out, in my opinion, with this transit. It's a powerful medical thing, though. We are going to see a lot more things on that front, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are right. And then, you know, digitally, quantum internet beta launches, then crashes. I mean, who knows? You know, it's just, we're just gonna, like, it's gonna blow our mind this next 18 and a half months. But these are just possibilities. And then Rahu goes into Dhanishta July 1st to November 25th of next year. I mean, we're already starting to see, you know, the US currency death, really. At least one G20 nation adopts crypto as legal tender as possibility. And then cultural hijacking. AI remixes sacred texts into viral memes. I mean, you already see that if you use AI, and I do like to use AI to clean up my writing. I do all my own research, all my own writing, but I have it help me write stuff, because I don't have time all day to, format everything perfectly when I can have them do it. But there could be, I mean, and if you use AI, you know how confused it gets. It gets a lot of things wrong. And if you do not know your
Yeah.
material, it will very much confuse you. So you have to treat it like it's the student and you're the teacher and you're grading it, because it will definitely, make up some really fantasy land stuff.
Yeah, one thing definitely on the air front as well. One thing to clearly I want to highlight is that because these are air signs, right? Aquarius is an air sign. You will also have Jupiter an air sign. We're going to probably see expansion of those internet technologies, the next level of technology. Some people already there are movies about how you can upload your digital self into a digital space and all that. So you might be seeing those kind of
Hmm.
uploading your intelligence, kind of living forever in the internet world kind of thing with your Facebook post or Twitter post and all that. So that kind of technologies could also be coming through. So definitely the next evolution of, cloud-based technologies will definitely happen. So it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Ketu in Leo through the nakshatras. We have Uttara Falguni from May 29th to July 6th of this year. Um, and the last celebrations, final glory days for aging icons, music and royalty. We could see the passing of some real icons in the industry. Um, I don't want to say who because I don't want to jinx anything.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I've been thinking about for a while. And karmic justice, high profile inheritance disputes exposed. That could be something that comes out, definitely.
Yeah. I
Because
think
Uttara Falguni,
yeah,
patronage, money.
exactly. Yeah. So big patrons, big patron families, big name families and all that, we are going to see some challenges coming through for sure. Definitely. Those families which are not maintain the spiritual upkeep, definitely they're going to see a big breakthrough happening without doubt. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And then Purva Falguni, July 6th of this year until April 20th of next year. This is a very long stretch. Um, Creative destruction. Legendary artists retire amid scandal. It's one possible thing. Or just retiring. There may not even be any scandal. They may just go hang in their hammock for the rest of their lives. But romantic downfalls, power couples collapse, Hollywood politics, more of that stuff. I mean, but in general, we already see the downfall of the celebrity status, right? People are just over it. They're just like, this doesn't bring validity to me anymore. So, and then April
Yeah,
20th of next, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, just quickly on Purafagini because the symbol is a bet, right? So you're going to see a lot of marriage kind of thing coming out, sexual scandals coming out as well. Those kind of things, while some actual scandals could also play out, so which could be very relevant. As you said, power couples collapse, also some great unions, great partnerships collapsing, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Not only to just individuals, but also to some big companies as well. So some partnerships, some lawyer firms and all that might have some big collapse. That can you can see. Yeah.
Yeah, very good observation. Yeah, big companies that were together, might split apart and collapse. And then April 20th through November 25th of next year, dynasties end, monarchies and CEOs ousted by ancestral karma, possibly. Spiritual ascension, new teachers rise from old institutions' ashes. Yeah, so could be very, very interesting. And K2 is likened
That's
to Mars, right? So that fire is
yeah.
really. Mhm.
Interestingly, the words you used is also fascinating because quite often Ketu is linked with ashes as well. So you might be seeing institutions that were you felt like it was destroyed and gone and dusted. Now they are actually coming back. Old practices coming forth, or even old ancient practices like pagan practices coming back forth, old gods coming back forth, as they call it. Stuff that could be really interesting. And no, even on top of that, some very ancient forms of gods could come forth. We might begin to look at some historical kind of thing coming, new insight upon the ancient practices, stuff like that. A lot of good stuff can also come, which is great on Maga. And then spiritual new teachers also excellent point because you're going to see a lot more new leaders show up within family circle, like new leaders called out with new elders being called out, right? That kind of thing you'll begin to see a little bit more actually old ancestral practices, old ancestors coming back and all that. That kind of karma could become much more stronger for sure. Yeah.
And also something that I've already been seeing on TikTok, burial practices. Um,
Okay, like what? What exactly?
well, of course, there's always conspiracies, etc. However, we got a lot of people in this country, and you know, I guess there's just been some questioning of the actual practices of burial. If people are actually being put into the coffins, what is happening to their organs if you donate
I
your
see.
organs?
Interesting.
Are people actually getting cremated?
Yeah.
Is the follow through there, for after
Yeah.
you die? Like that, this is a problem right now.
Interesting.
Um, and it kind of makes me wonder if I really want to donate my organs. I don't know.
Uh, yeah.
Maybe I kind of,
Yeah, it makes sense actually because you do have Rahu in Purvabhadrapada. The symbol of Purvabhadrapada is a funeral god. So as you said, around things around funeral coming, scandals around funerals, as you mentioned, that could be a real thing as well. It's very fascinating. You
hmm
mentioned that. I do think it could really become a theme also. Yeah.
yeah, and organ donation, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
all of
And he's
those
also in
issues.
the Shani is also in 12th house of Zodiac, which is Pisces, which is also donation. So you could really see that playing out also. So good point, yeah.
Yeah, just look it up on TikTok, you guys. You'll be surprised. Okay, and then we have Jupiter's transit on top of it. I thought let's just add him in because he's doing some cool stuff this couple of next years, with going into Cancer, which is his sign of exaltation. Um, so I call it the golden bridge between chaos and renewal. And when he is in Cancer is October 15th to December 6th of this year, which is like the dress rehearsal, for next year's golden age, right? Um, so here we have Jupiter in Gemini, May 1st to October 15th of this year. Could manifest as AI language models take center stage, Rahu Jupiter trine, increased discussions on tech ethics. And then it's also the Jupiter return for the US birth chart, which happens, every 12 years. And then Jupiter goes into Cancer October 15th to December 5th. The golden trailers. So we have November of this year, Jupiter Moon conjunction leads to emotional advancements in AI and healthcare. K2 Jupiter square, spiritual figures confront corrupt systems. Jupiter's 108-day Cancer transit forms a trine with Saturn in Pisces and hits all of the Cancer planets for India because India has quite a few And I thought I had saved the chart, but apparently I had not. So after this, I need to get the chart for India again because you have the time and everything. But I remember they have several planets in Cancer. So, this is really going to impact you guys, I think, bring a lot of good luck, a lot
Yeah.
of fortune.
Yeah. Cancer is also in the third house of neighbors for India. So you're going to see a lot more actions on the front with neighbors with India. There's a lot of crises kind of thing happening about the neighbors. Pakistan is going through a lot of ups and downs and all that. We're going to see a lot more action on that front. Those kind of news are going to be more recently. Just like just yesterday, like India suspended all the Pakistan nationals from entering into India. Like big crisis in diplomacy kind of thing is going on right now. So we're going to see that escalate for sure.
What is the Lagna for India?
It's a Taurus Lagna. So Cancer is the third
Taurus.
house.
Okay. Okay. So
They
Cancer's the
also
third
have
house.
Rahu in right, yeah. So Rahu is in the ascendant as well, also and so forth. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Katya. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then next year, the golden age dawns. So we have Jupiter returns to Gemini December 7th to June 1st. Final prep phase, Gemini, Jupiter organizes Aquarian Rahu's chaos. All right, because they're both in air signs. So this is going to actually help. AI regulation frameworks drafted, possibly. Then June 2nd to October 18th of next year, the promised era. We have universal basic care initiatives, right? Welfare for people. And then tech, emotional AI companions. And we already see this now. And this was on the news like last month. Someone was saying they were trying to ban, what was it? AI friends, like on this, it was like an app or something, and people develop. Yeah, and they were trying to take it away, and they were like, no, you can't take this away. And I just thought, what is happening?
Right.
Get out there and talk to people. I mean, I don't know, but that's where it's going. People are sick of other people and they just want to have AI friends, is where it's going.
Yeah, I would not be surprised by that. Yeah.
And then Jupiter enters Leo, which he does great in Leo too. I mean, he's exalted in Cancer, but he does great in Leo too. Um, and that's K2's final act as well. K2 conjunct Jupiter, November of next year. So that should be a very spiritual time, you
Yeah.
know. Thank God. But this year we go Gemini, Cancer, Gemini, and the next year Gemini, Cancer, Leo. So last time Jupiter transit from Gemini to Cancer was 88 to 89. The Berlin Wall fell. And then Cancer to Leo, 62 to 63, Civil Rights Act drafted. Um, so yeah, a lot of these things
So
overlapping. Go
yeah,
ahead.
just one thing quickly on the Jupiter and Cancer part. Definitely, Jupiter will also be um staying more in the Punarvasu Nakshatra area a little bit more. It'd be retrograding back and going forth and all that. That's one just observation here. That's
Mhm.
when I would expect a lot more spiritual practices to come back, old books being given more values, a lot of ancient spiritual practices coming to the front. Even that's when potentially even the aliens could come back, no. So, but that's why I would expect a lot of actions on that front. The spiritual practices thing, which we talked about already with Ketu and Leo part also, that this will kind of give an additional boost. We're going to pick a lot more pace and so forth, that kind of thing. Other thing is also like I want to highlight here the Jupiter return for US birth chart. Now that's when a lot of US will go through its next evolution of what there will be like a spiritual revival of sorts happening in USA all throughout also because of that. So it's going to boost a lot of spirituality. People are going to think more about religion, what religion they want to go through, stuff like, or what are their beliefs in a fundamental way, stuff like that. So it can be like a really eye-opening kind of thing with regard to what is driving, what is my motivations, and so forth. Definitely, you will see that kind of a change, a revaluation of the thing going on, in which you might find a lot of Jupiter return is also interesting, like because it might activate the energy of like, okay, we might as well come back to our home. Let's bring all the soldiers back home, kind of thing going on with the US kind of dismantling the bases and all that. That kind of theme is also something that might play out as Jupiter goes into Purvas, just like how the Berlin Wall broke and all the lot of families got reunited. You're going to see that kind of thing being a little bit more action. Yeah, so it'll be a
Right.
fascinating time for the US without doubt.
Right. And I actually know somebody who was living in Russia at the time that the Wall fell, and he said he's scared, you know. He's like, I remember that time. It was the wild, wild west, like there were no laws were being broken. We didn't know what was going on. And I said, yeah, but you have to go through that to get to the other side of it. Like you can't just keep up something that's not working anymore. It doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it matters how bad the dissolution is, but at the same time, you got to think about the outcome, you know,
Hmm.
not just the temporary discomfort.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so here we have our first lunar eclipse in the new cycle. It is September 7th or the 8th, depending on where you are in the world. And so let's take a look at the video. So y'all in India are definitely going to feel this real strong.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, looks pretty dark in India on that night for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of things being exposed. So here we have the chart from DC, and this is like the peak, this is the actual full moon peak of the cycle. So we have our moon in Aquarius, Purva Bhadrapada, the scorching star, accidents, tragedies, fiery transformation in the fourth house of the homeland, because I'm just looking at from that moment, right? And I do find this chart works rather well because if you know the U.S. birth chart, our ascendant is Sagittarius, which would
Right.
put this actually in the third house of the birth chart. But at the
Hmm.
peak moment, the ascendant is Scorpio, and so it makes it the fourth house. So
Yeah.
homeland's affected, public is mad, closer to the fixed star Ashtanar, actually, because the stars of Purva Bhadrapada are Markab and Sheet, and Markab is like at 29 degrees of
Okay.
Aquarius. So this is much closer to Ashtanar, which is better because that is about the arts and spirituality and religion and the priests and things like that, which brings a spiritual and artistic flair to this eclipse. So that actually helps us. And it's in opposition to this, it's a small stellium in Leo because we have the Brigu Bindu point of the chart here as well. And the midheaven is not far away. But yeah, we have this in the 10th house, right? So definitely with Ketu and Leo, this lunar eclipse is definitely going to be about leaders falling, you know,
Right. Yeah.
new spiritual innovations, new things going on. But oh, yeah, we're going to see, especially because of the 10th house, right?
Hmm.
Scorpio Lagna, Jastia, again, reinforcing authorities are in focus. Scandals around power struggles, military, police force, etc. Mars is the Lagna lord for this chart, and he is in Virgo, Chitra, which is also ruled by Mars, in the 11th house. And Mars in the 11th always is the soldier, right? This is the community, and he's in his military community here.
Hmm.
Again, the public is mad. New health technologies as well are going to come out
Hmm.
around this time. Um, and this is all in opposition to Saturn retrograde and Neptune retrograde. So spiritual or health cults, right? Breakthroughs in alternative healing as well. Jupiter is in Gemini, Punarvasu, in the 8th house for this chart. Technology, scandals, hacking of government computers, Mercury. And it's also the US Jupiter return.
Right,
And
right.
then I've just noticed, like when it's a full or a new moon or an eclipse or whatever, and we have a bunch of planets in Leo, guess what? Solar flares.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it should be a lot then, as when the sun is in Leo and other planets are conjunct it, produces solar flares. So,
Yeah, I think we'll probably see some big studies coming in sun sports and all that. We'll probably see a lot more scientific studies and research breakthroughs with the study of the solar physics and so forth as well. One thing you highlighted here was that of the disruption in homeland, which can be a real theme. So this is where Rahu being with Moon, Moon is usually states and Sun is usually the central government or the federal government. So we might begin to see that kind of issue, like some states agreeing with the President Trump's initiative, some states disagreeing, all that kind of issue we might begin to see also during that time period. Yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, right, right. And Pluto's retrograde at this time and is in opposition to Venus. So, and Venus is in, I mean, Venus does great in Cancer and really represents women very well. So you could see some women's health issues come out at this time, even like emotional health, even,
Right.
like mental health stuff coming out, um, especially with it being in Ashlesha, right?
Yeah.
Um, or rectifications to assault cases could come at this time
Yeah.
as well. Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of strong healing energy for families as well. Venus does bring you back from the dead, as it's called. So a lot of family energy is being revitalized. Notice that Venus will be going into Navamsha sign of Libra at that point in time. Libra is Venus' own sign, so you'll definitely see a lot of peace, diplomacy. Families kind of making a breakthrough in terms of reuniting and all that. So a lot of reunification in family themes will happen with Jupiter and Purnima. So, anyways. Venus and Ashlesha will kind of be the dinner which you're having or the dessert you're having kind of thing going on. So with family
Hmm.
members, that kind of thing also will play out much more easily. Ashlesha is also very strong poison transforming nakshatra. So that aspect will also come through. Healing around relationship energies and so forth also will happen
Hmm.
in Ashlesha. All that will also play out, yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay, so next we have our solar eclipse, which is September 21st. This one goes across the southern hemisphere and the Antarctic. So definitely, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific are going to feel this. And from DC, here's our chart. And, it's just 2 weeks later. But our ascendant actually is Sagittarius for this. So for the US, I feel like it'll really be impactful as well. That's our ascendant, right? So the moon is actually, though, in Virgo. It's not in Leo. It's in Uttara Falguni. But again, if you look at the degree difference, it's about 11-degree orb there. Um, But Moon is conjunct Mercury, ruler of Virgo, the star of patronage. Ketu is in Leo, and it's conjunct Venus. And it's in the 10th, well, this is in the 10th house, but this is in the 9th house. Rulers will fall due to overgiving. I feel like that is the downfall of Virgo. Whether they are being a patron because they really want to help, or they're being a patron because they just want their name on a plaque somewhere,
Right,
it could
right,
be
right.
their downfall, right? And so overgiving, could be a big problem for governments at this time. Um, And this is in opposition to that Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde in the fourth house of this chart. Government scandals will be made public. Again, overspending of the government is going to be a big focus. Department of Education will be in focus. And we have that Sagittarius Lagna, Uttara Ashada, the universal star. Focus is authorities, government, what they're doing, where they're spending. This is when all that stuff's going to come out. We have the US Jupiter return. And in the US birth chart, we have Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Sun all in Gemini. So that's going to activate all of those planets in the seventh house. So definitely, I feel like, obviously things are really strained with all of the relationships with the US right now, but maybe this is a time when things will start to turn around. Punarvasu, the star of renewal. Maybe the trade tariffs and things will be resolved by this time. Um,
Right.
yeah, I can't see this is going to be bad. Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde, hidden struggles related to faith and spirituality. Brainwashing. This is the classic brainwashing combination, right? Counterculture, exposure of cults, or new healing technologies could come out during this eclipse. And then peace. And this is, what, how many months after Venus retrograde? Um, Venus conjunct Ketu in the ninth house, 12th from the moon, tantric spirituality, money from the ancestors or overseas, DNA investigations, detached spirituality, detachment from father's religion. I feel like, um, while Venus has been retrograde, up until, what was it, April 12th, there was a lot of heated discussions and still warfare and things like that. But I feel like by this solar eclipse, things are going to come together for peace treaties. That's what I feel. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely the eclipse is happening in the 10th house here. So a lot of, and it's happening Virgo. So as you correctly said, the work efficiency kind of part at work becomes important. Are the funds being used correctly? Stuff like that. Interestingly, Ketu is in Leo actually, so it's a partial solar eclipse because of that. But the actual eclipse is happening in Virgo again. So themes that happened that was relevant last year and earlier this year also become very relevant. You had the lunar eclipse happening in Virgo and solar eclipse happening in Pisces. So that issue that happened around earlier this March or so will come back to some kind of resolution again very strongly. Virgo natives definitely will have it hard, but then at the same time with this eclipse though, because it's happening with Uttarfalguni Nakshatra again, you're going to see a lot of Uttarfalguni being ruled by Aryaman, the chief of the elders. You're going to see a lot of chiefs stepping down. You're going to see a lot of karma with the elders kind of thing. So more senior people having a tough time. That kind of thing is something you're going to see. Uttarfalguni is also marriage nakshatra. Some marital issues kind of thing can also happen. So something to watch out for. The other thing which you mentioned here is the Shani being with Netro. It's a very good point that Shani and Neptune is retrograde and directly, almost directly aspecting the eclipse points of Sun and Moon actually. So that's a big point. So that you might really see it come for a lot of Neptune can represent things that are hidden in the ocean also. So you're going to see a lot of things in the ocean come through lot more challenges. The counterculture thing is a very good point. So definitely you might be seeing new kind of a counterculture thing going on. The hospital and the medical system going through a complete revamp of sorts. So we saw that particular aspect is also going to come through more. As I was mentioning, this could also be the both point of view, the personalized medicine kind of aspect taking its own life in a big way. So that's when I would expect things to open up a lot more strongly, in my opinion. You might see that going on also. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also, the submergible UFOs in the ocean, you know,
Uh, yeah.
that's something, again, they're already here. Like they've been a part of this planet a lot longer than us, you guys. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to hear a lot more about that, you know, this next, cycle. I think it's going to be huge. Okay, so just a very brief overview of, you know, how these cycles panned out over the last, up until the 30s, basically. And then we're going to go back to 1673 because that's where it gets real interesting. But this is basically what we have, 2006, 2008, 87 to 89, 69 to 71, 50 to 52, and then 31 to 33. I did not do a slide on this, but this is a bonus just to show you how things panned out. Okay, so we have the last cycle, which was 2006 to 2008. We had our technological revolution, iPhone launch, Twitter's rise, and then we had social upheaval, Obama's election, Bitcoin white paper was then. And then we had the fall of institutions and celebrity downfalls, Ketu and Leo. So the 2008 financial crisis, the Lehman Brothers collapse, $8 trillion wealth vanished. And then the celebrity downfalls. And this was one I wanted to look up because I wasn't as familiar with this. Now, I was with Britney Spears, her conservatorship battle. Um, K2 is our ego. It's also hair um, dismantled. And that's when she literally shaved her head off. I thought that was very interesting. But Elliot Spitzer scandal, Leo, figures exposed. So Spitzer was exposed as client 9 in a federal prostitution investigation, having patronized the high-end escort service Emperor's Club VIP. Very MAGA, isn't it? He had spent tens of thousands of dollars on escorts, including a well-known encounter in a Washington, D.C. hotel. Spitzer, who had built his reputation as the Sheriff of Wall Street as New York Attorney General, resigned as governor in disgrace just 2 days after the scandal broke. The scandal was particularly damaging because of his moralistic stance. He had prosecuted prostitution rings and financial fraud cases. What a hypocrite! So if you're a hypocrite, you will be taken
Right.
down
Yeah.
during this cycle.
Yeah. No.
And then the aftermath and the comeback. So after years spent in political exile, he attempted a comeback. A failed New York City comptroller run in 2013. Later became a CNN commentator and media figure, though his political career never fully recovered. So that's just an example of what we're going to see. Then we had 87 to 89, the pre-digital revolution. So, innovation, networks, collective liberation, 87, internet protocol standardized. Aquarius rules, networks, technology, and universal connection. The TCP/IP became the backbone of the modern internet, enabling global communication, a Rahu and Aquarius disruptive awakening. And then we had in 89 the Hubble Space Telescope. And I think, we'll hear more with the James Webb during this time, a lot more. Like, I think we'll get a lot of data coming in during the cycle from it. Then K2 and Leo, Berlin Wall fell. And then also the fallout from that, as I said, wasn't all It wasn't all a party, shall we say. Leo rules kingdoms, borders, and ego-driven divisions, and Ketu's transit dissolved this royal barrier, ending Cold War era segregation. And then in 87, we had the Black Monday stock market crash, which, mirrored the 2008 one.
Yeah,
Then we
so
had,
that the
yeah.
Black Monday thing could be a real thing. So I would not be surprised if like a financial scandal came through or a big crash happened again. Already we saw Trump's tariff kind of thing crashing and all that. I would not be the tariff could be the thing, but something else could be causing a big crash again. Listen, Ketu and Leo will affect wealth for sure. Okay, Purafaka is a nakshatra linked with stocks actually. So I would not be surprised when around the eclipse time again, we're going to see the September eclipse time and some issue does fall out. So we'll get to see that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So gold, you guys, gold and silver. That's what you want to focus on. So, yeah, we did that. We did that. Okay, 69 to 71. So 69, the moon landing. Okay, that's big. And we are finally going to get back to the moon and go to Mars. So that is something that is a pattern repeat. Apollo 11 mission marked the first human steps on the moon, fulfilling Aquarian ideals of radical progress and universal connection. And then 71, email was invented. Did you know that? It went back all that way. Ray Tomlinson's invention laid the foundation for global connectivity, a classic Rahu and Aquarius disruption. Irony, originally designed for scientists, it became a tool for mass communication, Aquarius's collective ethos. And then we have Ketu and Leo, 69, Elvis's career decline. After his 68 comeback, Elvis slid into stagnation, Vegas residencies, health issues, Ketu dissolving the king of rock's invincibility. Ketu strips away false crowns. The cultural throne was passing to new voices. And I remember that day. I remember when he died, not in 69, he died in 78.
Right.
And I will never forget that day because I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma with my mom, and all the adults left, all of us kids at the apartment and went out to, watch the news. I mean, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, there was just radio and TV, right? And it wasn't
Yeah.
very sophisticated TV. But I just remember that day so vividly when Elvis died. So there could be another icon that passes at this time. And then the 70, the Beatles break up. Leo governs creative royalty and enduring legacies. Their split marked the end of music's most iconic kingdom. K2 severing Leo's loyalty to tradition. Hidden layer, solo careers flourished. K2 forces spiritual rebirth through loss. So even though it collapsed, what happened? The solo careers of all of the, people in the band flourished after that.
Right.
And here we have Woodstock and the Apollo 11
Yeah, I think
rocket
the
going up.
Woodstock kind of thing is interesting because you'll see some more new festivals show up and all that. Some big legendary festivals going to start right now for sure. Woodstock
Hmm.
was what became an eventual thing. So Rahu's again, Aquarius again. So the counterculture movement is definitely going to show up in a big way, without doubt. So that's looking pretty good. New kind of counterculture. If the aliens show up, whatnot, right? You're going to see new kind of thing coming up. All that kind of aspect for sure. Yeah.
Right. Then we have 50 to 52 post-war reordering. So in 51, UN headquarters completed. The UN's glass-walled HQ symbolized transparency and global unity through Rahu's shadow later revealed geopolitical tensions. And the paradox is that designed for peace during the Cold War, Aquarius's idealism versus Rahu's disruptive reality.
No,
52,
I do believe the UN will go through a big transformation. Either is definitely not going to, US could be pulling its funding and problems around that is something going to come forth. I do think US has already pulled funding back from WHO. So I'm gonna see that kind of thing happen for the UN. So there could be some real crisis kind of situation happening with the UN for sure. Yeah.
right. Yeah. And power struggles, who has the authority, the UN or the US, right? That seems to be the problem right now because the UN makes a mandate and the US says, oh, we're not going to listen to you. Well, it's like, well, why is it there in the first place? If
Yeah.
you're not going to listen to what they say, there's going to be a real contest of authority there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then 52, first hydrogen bomb test. The 10.4 megaton blast vaporized an island, marking humanity's entry into the thermonuclear age. Rahu's hunger for power through technology. Einstein's warning, Aquarian progress without wisdom is Rahu's demise, I believe is what it says. So yeah, we are going to see, I'm afraid, nuclear energy, but nuclear warfare come back into focus. And then Ketu and Leo, 1952, King George VI dies. The beloved king's death ended the British Empire's post-war stability. Hidden shift, daughter Elizabeth II's coronation began a new, more vulnerable era for royalty, right? So the shift could actually be a good thing for them. I mean, but at this point, it kind of could be, I don't know. I don't want to say the end, but it's the end of an era, definitely, where they're not going to be as important, but definitely maybe a more female leadership will help.
Right.
William's wife, And 51, ICC bans apartheid in cricket. The ICC's white-dominated boycott of South Africa was an early crack in apartheid's legitimacy. Ketu's burning Leo's illusion of racial superiority. And so I think this and the UN are going to line up because, the UN is trying to crack down on apartheid. And we see in history that, it was done, right? They actually did it. They actually, especially, with South Africa, they were
Right.
able to take control of the situation. So I think that is something that we will see during the cycle as well. Historical thread, prelude to Mandela's later victory. Exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to say. A prelude to the victory of the people who are being subjugated by apartheid. So,
Right. Yeah.
okay, now it gets real interesting. So I had to go all the way back in my software to 1673 to find when Rahu was in Aquarius, Ketu was in Leo, and Saturn was in Pisces. And the last time was 1673. And so this was what was happening all around the world at that time, okay? We had the Third Anglo-Dutch War, a major naval conflict involving England, France, and the Dutch Republic, astrological reflection, Rahu in Aquarius, and Ketu in Leo. Yeah, this, I feel like with Saturn being in Pisces, we're already seeing what's happening with Yemen, right? And what's
Yeah.
happening with the shipping industry. I think that's going to be a big um, expression of this combination. The Franco-Dutch War. France invaded the Dutch Republic, leading to political turmoil and the assassination of Dutch leader Johan de Witt. So again, K2 in Leo, Saturn in Pisces is reflecting here. The Great Turkish War begins, 1683, but tensions rising earlier. The Ottoman Empire was expanding into Europe, leading to the famous Battle of Vienna. And
Hmm.
this is reflected through Rahu in Aquarius and Saturn in Pisces. So lots of clashes of the old, right, with the
Yeah.
new ideas, new boundaries being taken down.
Yeah.
Scientific. Yeah, go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah, just so Franco-Dutch War, the fact that there was a issue with France and Netherlands or Dutch land at that point in time, it kind of shows that there might be some challenges in the EU kind of thing. We might be seeing the first cracks in the EU kind of thing at that point in time, the European Union. And then the Anglo-Dutch War, there was a conflict there actually. So we are going to see a lot more disruptions in alliances kind of thing, as you mentioned. So the European Union will definitely be having some challenges and so forth. Potentially the refugee crisis being amplified and all that. That's what is more likely to create issues. And the interesting thing you mentioned, the Turkish war. Just want to say that Turkey is one of the big countries neighboring Israel and all that. So you're going to see some action on that front. Maybe Turkey is getting tired of what's going on and all that. That kind of thing might also potentially happen. We might begin to see more Turkey kind of supporting those kind of activities in that what appears to be warlike thing. They are supporting the rebels in private or whatnot. That kind of thing might also be
Mm-hmm.
happening. So we might be seeing some real actual conquering with the ancient Ottoman Empire teams will again play out in one way or the other. Turkey might try to consolidate a lot of power and all that. We might begin to see that emergence of a bigger power there with Turkey there for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I mean, and in general, a reconfiguration of what the Middle East borders are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be a real big theme for sure without a doubt.
Hmm. Hmm. And then we have scientific and philosophical shifts. So 1675, founding of the Royal Greenwich Observatory for astronomy. That's important. In 77, Spinoza's death. His philosophy challenged religious authority, Ketu and Leo dissolving old dogma. So we're already seeing that in physics. My husband is in physics, and he's always railing against, the dark matter theory and black holes and all of this nonsense that they try to
Mhm.
perpetuate. And you're finally now starting to see people in mainstream speak out against these theories and say, no, we need to push farther, and there's different things going on. And the magnetic field is, not being, uh, you know, taken into account the way it should. And, just a lot of these old ideas dying.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then themes that may echo this year and into next year: power struggles between old regimes and reformist movements, new warfare tactics or cyber conflicts, right? And I think we're already seeing that with, the planes going down and things. They're suspecting, cyber warfare. And then the spiritual and humanitarian crisis, scandals in religious institutions, or refugee crises.
Mhm. Yeah, that'll be a big Saturn and Pisces thing for sure. And as you highlighted, new technologies coming up on the astronomy and space related fields, and how the old dogma, old powers that has to be dissolved is getting dissolved as well. So we're going to see newer ways of looking at the world for sure. That is going to come up in a big way and there might be a collective quality to it, like how is the we are going to see a lot of transformations on that thought field kind of thing. Leo is a dharma sign, as it's called. Dharma is purpose in many ways as well, and purpose being linked with the reality of the world as it is. Like, your purpose is more or less aligned with the nature of reality. That's what the whole point of dharma is actually. So you begin to see things becoming more real. So the call out for the power, the royalty people or power structures, or even beliefs in our driving beliefs in our own self and our own identity and all that, you begin to see those kind of things getting dissolved. And that one of the first thing is that political thing. If you have been like, say, you're a Republican for a long time, now you're questioning that. You're a Democrat for a long time, now you're questioning that. So it's like most of the people, the power, our identity is linked with a political thing which we're drawn to as well. We're going to see a lot of changes on that front as well. Definitely the old regimes and reformist movements, new reformist movements coming on either side and so forth, especially international nature, like quality of philosophical shifts linked with the collective world. Actually, you're going to see that kind of thing a little bit more for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the scandal and the hospital thing, the refugee thing will be a big thing. You're going to see a real lot more scandals coming on the refugee or recognizing the effects of refugees also in a big way. So that could also play out in a big way in the next few years for sure. Especially after the eclipse and so forth. We'll definitely see a new kind of crisis happening with refugees, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the victims of war.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, the US was not the US. It was still owned by the Spanish. And this is what I invite all of my friends who are recent immigrants to this country to realize is that, not all of the white people here are descended from the English. Before the English were here, it was the Spanish. Before the Spanish, it was the French. Before the French, it was the Portuguese, right? And before the Portuguese, we know that the Phoenicians were here and the Romans were here. And so, these people didn't just leave when the lands got conquered. A lot of people stayed here. And so there's a lot of, very deep, rich cultural heritage that a lot of people don't really know about, right? And so when you dig back into these deep, the past before 1776, you see a lot. So here in the US, we had the European colonization and Native American resistance. So we had, of course, New England was here. The Puritan colonies were expanding, but tensions with Native Americans led to King Philip's War, one of the deadliest conflicts per capita in US history. And this was reflected with Ketu and Leo, right? Ending Native resistance, thinking he's, ending Native resistance in the region. Virginia and Maryland, we had Bacon's Rebellion, which is a revolt by settlers against the colonial elite. And it wasn't just, settlers, it was also servants and enslaved Africans. This is depicted with Rahu and Aquarius, right? New Netherland, which is now New York, formerly Dutch. It had been seized by England in 1664, but retained Dutch influence. And this is seen with Saturn and Pisces, shifting cultural identities, blurred loyalties. Yeah, I mean, if you look up the early Dutch settlers of Monmouth County in New Jersey, you'll find all of the information you want to about this. I actually have relatives that go back to this. And then French exploration and Jesuit missions, we have Louis Joliet and Jacques Marquette. They explored the Mississippi River, claimed land for France, became Louisiana later. The Jesuit missions attempted to convert Native Americans, sometimes leading to conflict. Imagine that. And this is seen, through Saturn and Pisces, spiritual imposition, hidden suffering of indigenous peoples. Then we have slavery and early racial codes. So Virginia's slave laws. The colony was formalizing racial slavery. Around 1670, law declaring enslaved Africans as lifelong servants. And this is seen, of course, Rahu and Aquarius, disruption of social order, beginnings of a system that would later explode into civil war, which, that was seen in our last solar eclipse, was the last time we had a solar eclipse like we did was right before our Civil War here in the US. So both of those patterns are getting hit upon during this cycle. We had the Pueblo Revolt, 1680, a little bit later, but still relevant. While a few years after 1673, the Pueblo people in present-day New Mexico violently expelled Spanish colonizers for over a decade. And this, is, of course, is Ketu and Leo. So themes that may echo from this in 2025: grassroots uprisings, not just music, but also people, right? Like Bacon's Rebellion, we could see anti-establishment revolts. Cultural clashes, Saturn and Pisces may bring crises around immigration and identity. And then, of course, technological and territorial shifts, just as 1673 saw French exploration, 2025 could bring space AI disputes.
Yeah, just one quick thing, Katya. What you
Uh-huh.
shared, that was pretty amazing stuff. Like one thing here you mentioned is that the new slave laws coming. So which I believe could be definitely you're going to see a reform in the immigration laws and all that. That's going to be a big thing. So like already there's been a big hit with the uh, ICE people and all that. They've been pretty active recently with a lot of deportations happening. Increased deportations and all that is something you begin to see and so on. So that is one aspect. So you're going to definitely see that particular karma play out, that particular aspect play out here, as you said. Grassroots uprising is kind of interesting because, like, what if the Mexicans revolt of things like that, Mexican community revolt and all. So that racial identity kind of thing is going to be a big deal when after this eclipse for sure. Like, okay, are you Mexican? What race? The race wars could play out in a different way this time, but more in a political kind of sense. You're going to see consolidation of power on that front. The other thing which you described is fascinating because again shifting cultural identities and loyalties, which you mentioned. So it's very fascinating. We might be seeing some. Um, no, the French exploration part is very much more interesting. Definitely, I can say there might be a lot more being looked into the oceans and things that are submerged in the oceans and so forth with Saturn and Pisces. So that kind of karma will play out in a deeper way. So you might begin to see that a lot. And as you said, attempting to convert Native Americans sometime into conflict. So we're going to see a lot of institutions go through a lot of transformations on that front, especially on the conversion front and all that. So people are trying to convert others from one church to other church. The drama is going to play out in a big way. And the indigent servants and enslaved Africans again, the colonial elite is a clear shift in power struggle actually. So I do think there might be like the rebellion against authority and class struggle which you described with cultural clashes. That is definitely going to be a big theme after this eclipse, in my opinion, because that cultural clash, who's holding the real power? We need more power, or representation of minorities, or is this the real? This is how it should be, all that kind of thing. So we're going to see a break. Like what I would say is that we're going to see a big shift in a lot of diversity kind of policies that will happen which originally was race driven. We are going to see that kind of thing go through a big crisis of all the diversity. Already in university, they are going through a tough situation with diversity initiatives right now, like especially after Trump and all that. Now you're going to see a lot more that literally coming to the front in a big way. So you will see that particular thing. I hate to say this, but there will be again an emergence or racism kind of thing coming up, and then eventually there will be another side of the other side of racism, which is like power struggles that come around that will also begin to show up in a big way soon. That's what, and then from the Native American perspective, is very interesting because they did go through either a lot of rebellion and all that. So, um, whatever you mentioned here, whichever were the Native American races mentioned here, like in whatever activities you mentioned here, those races, whether it was Iroquois, whether it's the Cherokee people or whatnot, you're going to see those particular Native American races go through their own transformations again. So that's something, one way or other, you might see those particular reservations having their own unique thing going on based on the historical thing which happened around this time period. So this will be something to watch out for. You mentioned Native American resistance at some point in time, like the Wampanoag place and all that. So wherever that conflict happened, wherever the King Philip's War happened, that land will also have a big issue kind of thing happening in some way or the other. So that's something you'll begin to observe also. Something to keep in mind. These are very good historical locations which I recognize, but definitely these lands will also have its own new thing going on. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something to keep an eye out for, to be frank. So keep that in mind. Who is
Mm-hmm.
in New York or Virginia and the land where the King Philip's War happened, along the Mississippi River and all that. You're going to see you're going to see some old themes come forth, which could become very relevant right now. So just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's an excellent research because you identified certain locations so something that happened 400, 500 years ago, same imprints could be awakened again now in a more different sphere. Now, no one is going to fight each other out. That you might see a lot more legal battles happening in that region on account of these kind of things as well. So that's a good point. I just want to make sure that this particular information is utilized in a higher way, if that makes sense, because
Mm-hmm.
people just go over just what happened, but you could actually identify certain locations from this place. Keep that in mind as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and also, I mean, a lot was happening around Appalachia, and right now, with the Hurricane Helene
Right.
recovery, there's a lot of talk about, land rights and mineral deposits and mining
Yeah.
and then of course, I'm in the Melungeon Heritage Association, and I'm actually going to be
Hmm.
interviewing my cousin, who's the president, on Saturday, talking
Hmm.
about the new database that they have for the melungeonroots .com, where you can go and put in
Yeah.
your surname and look at all of the information about it. So all of that, K2 and Leo ancestors, DNA, from this time period is going to be really coming out because, for Melungeons, this goes back, you know, way before the British were here. The British just kind
Yeah.
of, are the last conquerors.
Yeah.
But I just pulled up the chart from 1673 where I thought it was interesting how Rahu and Saturn were very close in degree. It was the first of that year. And you see, we have Saturn and Jupiter in an opposition, which is, a game changer. Um, but, Uranus during that time was riding with Rahu. And so that really brought on more of the expansive, breakthrough, eureka moments that we saw during that time. Right now, Uranus is in Taurus. And historically, that's usually been a time when the US has been at war. Every time the US has been at war, Uranus has been in Taurus. Um, and it is squaring, where Uranus is at that time. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So this is good. This interesting as you mentioned because that particular year you did have Saturn and Rahu both in the same positions actually. Rahu was of course in Satyabhisha Nakshatra then. So it's very fascinating if you carefully see. Pluto was also in Ardhara at that point in time, which is far off actually. So that Rahu kind of energy is happening in a very collective way, in a very Plutonian fashion, right? So like the whole war and underworld kind of thing going on. And as you mentioned, Saturn in Pisces with Jupiter was also in Virgo, which kind of changed a lot. Now we don't exactly get Jupiter in Virgo. However, Jupiter will be in Cancer, aspecting Saturn, which is something that will happen briefly, as you mentioned, October and all that. So you are going to see some similar themes with change in law, targeting a particular group and all that a little bit more. So you're going to see that kind of thing happen without a doubt, actually. So that'll be fascinating to see. Then also uh, I think the other thing which you mentioned was that of like, Rahu being in Aquarius and Shani being 12 from that. So Rahu being 12 from Shani actually. So you're going to see a lot of challenges for working class people or challenges for the working people in general. So that's the service sector is going to go through a big change. Of course, the AI disruption is already on the go. You're going to see Rahu being in Shani will definitely affect the Shani class people in a big way. So maybe, as you said, usually the minimum wage thing is the usual thing that happens here, but then you're going to see a different kind of consolidation of power happening around this time period also. You did mention about Ketu and Maga, like the race kind of thing also, like different lands linked with the land of the ancestors and so forth. So we might be onto something new on that front. So
Mm.
exciting times ahead for sure.
Yeah, I mean, don't take away Americans' Mexican restaurants, like you will definitely have a fight on your hands. And you try to
Right.
take them away from us, we will tell you no more tacos for you. You are not in the club. Yeah, no, there's definitely going to be a big, fight about this. But I really feel optimistic though, and I think it's because Jupiter is going to be in Punarvasu for so long. So, regardless of Gemini or Cancer, Jupiter will be in Punarvasu from August 13th until June 18th of next year. And I feel like this is kind of our little golden ticket, you know? So patterns to watch, AI regulation battles like 2008's financial reforms, but it's all about the renewal. This is what people need to focus on is the renewal, not the destruction. Um, so celebrity institutional falls, like 89's political collapses, spirituality, surge in meditation apps, K2 and Leo, soul focus. That could be something that we'll see. But the Punarvasu influences renewal and second chances. Jupiter in Punarvasu revives stalled efforts, offering divine timing for rebirth, lost opportunities return with grace. Growth through humility. Success comes from simplicity. Family, tradition, and patience bring unexpected abundance. And guided journeys. Spiritual or physical quests, travel, study, pilgrimage, align with destiny as synchronicities light the way. So yeah, if we focus on, our spiritual growth, then you know, the dawn of the new day will come. I feel like there's so much darkness around us right now, but this is a very good sign that things are going to improve.
Yeah, yeah, of course. It's a good point. Now that AI is exploding, a lot of fake things being created. So a lot of real regulation thing will show up. You're going to see the first set of battles between a lot of movie industry giants with the AI companies, so the rights and all that, or musicians fighting against AI companies like, well, my voice should not be utilized. So those kind of activities is gonna come in a big way. At the same time, like as you said here with the spirituality aspect, actually Jupiter will be in a Jupiter nakshatra, which is going to increase a lot more spiritual activities through your handheld devices. So mobile phones being what you hold in your hand these days. So you begin to see those kind of things. And potentially you might begin to see emergence of new kind of devices also, in my opinion. You might begin to see some more personal medical kind of devices kind of thing going on. new revolution happening on that front. Like your own, already there are instruments you can use to measure Apple Watch and all that can measure your own medical parameters more, right? So things like that is going to happen in a big way and so forth. Renewal thing is a very important point. We're going to see a renewal of old spiritual practices, as I mentioned before. Also, the guided quest, a lot more traveling is going to happen. A lot more workshops, a lot of people coming online, a lot of good stuff coming back online, stuff like that. And you're going to see some very powerful knowledge come through during this time. But also, really, Aditi is a goddess who is the mother of the gods or devas. So you're going to see a lot of light-based teachings, light being-based teachings, stuff like that. Ancient knowledge coming back to the front, all that kind of thing coming up. So it's an excellent time period for an astrologer, actually, on one front. Those Shanis and Pisces, which can like make a lot of spiritual people go through their own issues, but then Jupiter in Purnasu, it's a ray of hope for sure. So that is at least showing, beginning to show some horizon. In my opinion, we might be seeing the first real kind of spirituality coming forth after a long time, especially when Jupiter enters into Cancer briefly and all that. Because remember, in Purnasu Pada 4, it becomes what they call as Vargotama actually. That's an actual thing going on, which will be quite a good thing in my opinion. So that's a pretty good thing that is about to happen as well, the way I see it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, hopefully, an emphasis on the divine feminine, and peace. I'm hoping that's
Yeah,
in.
yeah. So definitely we are going to see a lot more. Um, Jupiter is in a lucky position there. It will definitely be very strong actually. So at least Jupiter in Uranus Pada 3 and Pada 4 becomes very strong. So even though things might look bleak with many other ways, with Saturn being in Pisces and Rahu being in a Saturn in sign, Jupiter is definitely going to aspect Rahu, which is going to make it more guided or more intelligent, as it's called. It's going to expand a lot of things. Definitely a lot more journey more than before. A lot more renewal kind of thing. A lot of rebranding and all that you're going to see here actually on all fronts. Like a lot of companies go through rebranding. A lot of people might just start to rebrand their stuff, all that kind of thing. They might start to add technology-based solutions with their work. All that kind of thing is going to increase significantly actually.
Yeah. Using AI for good. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, y'all. So if you want to book a reading with Dr. Santhip Kanholy, here is his email address. And I live here in Bloomington, Indiana. I am available at the Fountain Square Mall. Um, and you can see me in person. You can book your readings here. Or if you just want to do it online, we can do that as well. And then sign up for my free monthly newsletter. And my all of my articles are on the website. Um, and then this is basically how I compiled my information together. Anything else
Yeah.
you'd like
So
to
great.
say before we end?
Yeah, great. I think Katya, you gave a conference also, right? So you gave some conference presentation, Arsha thing also, right? You could mention that what people could get that also. Be good thing for people to know about actually.
Yeah, so it was the March 2025 Arsha Jyotish conference that Meenakshi puts on a couple times a year. And I just did a workshop on case studies and how, I use tarot and psychic mediumship along with Vedic astrology with my clients. So if you're interested in that presentation, you can head on over to arshajyotish.com. And she now has all of the workshops up online, so you can just purchase, the package or individually or whatever. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, Katya. So yeah, this is a good presentation actually. A lot of information here. So it'll be very interesting to see how it all plans out actually. So I'm sure this will be a lot of good things are going to happen this year. So this will be interesting time period for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me
great.
for this. And, if you have any questions, just send us a message. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.